Welcome to the Non-Essential Podcast. I'm Steve Gibson.
I'm Ben Matlock.
We're back.
Welcome back.
I had created this whole bit in my head. I was going to be Richard Lee Dickley, so Dickley. And I wanted to do it like all fancy. Yeah.
Dickley do right.
Double Dickley, the third Esquire.
Yeah.
And I wanted to do that, but have it like, do it all like, I'm Richard Lee Dickley. Some call me Dickley. But have like the Masterpiece Theater music in the background. Mm-hmm. Turns out to do something like that, you have to like put in effort to find the music and figure out how to play the music like through the recording channel at the same time that you're recording, and it was too much work. So I thought I'd just explain.
So I just tell you what I felt in my heart, and I could have done.
And I hope that you all give me full credit for this assignment.
For the non-essential grand reopening, I thought about making it special for you.
And now you all know what it was like being one of my teachers in high school, where they're like, Steve, it's time for your oral report. And be like, well, I was going to do an oral report, and it was going to be about this, and my poster would have been fantastic. Yeah. Trust me.
Yeah, that's the problem, is you think about all this cool shit to do. I didn't think about the show at all after it posted. Like, I went on a true fucking vacation. I played Call of Duty for 2 straight weeks. Got called a lot of homophobic slurs by 14-year-olds, and now I'm back. I'm recharged. I'm ready for,
That's
I'm ready.
The kind of hate that you need to fuel yourself for this show.
Yeah, it turns out there's something worse than you doing this show. To like zero feedback. It's getting feedback from a crappy team in a video game for children.
I had kind of gotten that. I haven't played a Modern Duty, Call of
Modern
Warfare,
Duty,
Battlefield,
Mr. Warfare
disc. Yeah, I haven't played any of those games in a long time, and we've talked about it, especially when we had the video game show. It's like, I don't hate them; they're fun, but they just tend to be the same thing. So like, I take breaks. But it's been long enough where I was kind of like, that could be fun. But I was thinking, and now I'm at a point in my life with Lincoln's getting old enough where I have to consider like
you got to introduce her to war.
Yeah, right. No, homophobic slurs. Are you taking notes, Lincoln? Write that one down. That was a good one.
Honey, sometimes you're going to play a video game online and they're going to beep.
No, but I think about because I have very little time to play games anyway. And if I limit it to like games that I can only play after, like when she's not around, that cuts it even like further down. So I've been playing, I haven't played a lot of stuff at all anyway, but the stuff I do play tends to be the stuff that I can play in front of her and not feel like the world's worst parent. Like some of it's still pretty bad. Like I play Yakuza. that can be a little violent.
You should play Kirby and the Forgotten Land, because that game is family friendly. Your response to it will not be.
There are a lot of games like that. Yeah, it was a nice break. Sounds like hopefully you had a good Thanksgiving, or at least a good day or two off work. That's what it's really all about.
I ate a lot and got pretty sick, actually. But yeah, it was really low key, which is how I prefer things to go. Like you tell me all the time about like shit you're doing, and like you're going to see like your parents and stuff, and having dinners and stuff, and I'm always like, that sounds so exhausting. I never want to go out to have dinner with family again.
My family, it's fine because it's like my side of the family, it's my mom and dad, and then sometimes my brother and his wife are there. My nieces are old enough now that they're usually they'll come sometimes, but they're usually doing their own things. My brother's oldest daughter lives on her own now, so she's that old compared to my toddler that's running around. So that's weird. So those aren't a big deal to me. If we go have dinner with my parents, it usually means driving out there for like an hour or two and then driving back. They live 25 minutes away. Tara's family, and that's what's coming up. We made the bargain with him this year that like either we were going to do Thanksgiving up there or Christmas up there, but not both. Usually we do both.
I like the idea that I have to haggle about my days off.
Right. Well,
how about this? I'm going to fucking... I'm going to do what I did for 2 weeks.
That's the thing. I think I think that the thing is, they all think that like I personally hate going up and seeing them. It's like, well, yeah, I'm really lucky.
No, they cut off the sentence wrong. I hate going.
Exactly.
I don't. It's not to anything. It's not about anyone. It's, you know, you get a few set days off a year from your job, hopefully. Otherwise, you know, I've been there. Sorry, people in retail. But you hope that you can use those days to chill, and that's not chilling.
No, it's the opposite of chilling. And that's exactly it. Like I said, I'm lucky. I actually really like her family. Like, they're all really cool except for one of you. You know who you are.
Yeah.
But yeah, I hate it's a 3-hour drive there and 3-hour back. We don't spend the night, which is great because I would hate it even more if it took 2 of my days off. But that means you're spending 6 hours in the car to spend 3 or 4 hours with them. There's got to be like a Burger King
in the middle you could both meet up at.
Right.
Like,
and her side of the family, though, it's like her parents are divorced, and now her sister's divorced, and it ends up that there's like, you don't just go up there and say, okay, well, here's our one destination. It's like you have to go up there,
you realize,
2 or 3 different homes, and then there's like a total of 150 people. You said that's exhausting.
With all the
like
fucking,
they're all cool.
With all the fucking kids and divorces and shit, like everybody's got a goddamn Game of Thrones family tree now. It's fucked up and big and a mess, and that's why I don't deal with it.
I know. I very much appreciate that mine is. I've got, like I said, my parents and my brother and his wife, that they all live within like 20 minutes of me. I've got an aunt and uncle that I really like, but they live in Florida, and I see them once a year.
I got told that this is true. This is really true. I got told recently that my cousin, one of my cousins, had a baby recently, and it took me about a solid month to realize that it was like, they kept saying her name, and I was like, oh, is that a friend of my brother's? Like, it took me a month to realize I had a cousin. Still, like, so that's the type of like mindset I'm operating under when it comes to family. Like,
yeah, like I said, I've got about the 6, and then I've got an aunt that I don't like dislike, but she lives in Texas, and I see her about once every 2 decades. So, and I'm 40, so that means I've seen her twice.
That's enough. So, like,
right.
I feel like if like we were meant to be closer, like we would be more into more of the same shit.
Yeah, basically, like, what you want from your extended family is like when you find out that they got old and died, you go, "Oh, that's sad."
What I want is,
you're like,
what I want is for them to not ruin my dinner. Like,
well, and I don't even care that much about dinner. I eat all the time. It's my day off. Like you said, I get very few days off, and I want my damn day off.
But I was gonna say, like, and this, it spits in the face of the whole holiday tradition, but and traditions in general, when did eating become a social thing? That's what I don't understand. Like, I've never understood it since I was a kid. Like, I remember my mom used to like get really annoyed because like me and my brother would want to eat and like watch TV and shit, and it's like, we were going to eat at the table tonight. Who gives a shit? To like what? Prove that I'm putting it in my fucking mouth? Like,
well, you got to talk about your day. And I hate
hearing about people's days.
Well, especially, you know what I hate more than hearing about people's days is being asked about mine, because I think people think I'm being a dick or something. But everybody's like, "Oh, how was your day?" And it's like every other fucking day, like literally, like there was absolutely nothing in my day to day that was different than.
Watch the Truman Show, because we're all trapped in it.
Right.
God damn it! Like, not that much cool shit happened.
And if something like unusually annoying or whatever came up at work, then I don't want to fucking talk about that, because
like I actually do like going out to eat with like my mom and my brother and stuff, like my close family, because that's when like that is kind of like we catch up and shit and tell each other stories that have kind of accumulated. But regular dinner and shit, like day to day, not that much interesting shit happens.
Exactly.
Like, so to me, it's like that just turns into let's bitch about work. Like.
And I don't need to do that.
You feel it. You feel it when I come home. Like,
well, to me, that makes it worse. Like, if I can come home and just forget about it, great, I win.
Yeah.
If I have to bring it back up and rehash it, it's like, God damn it, now I'm back on this. Like,
yeah, I'll fucking write you a newsletter. I'll just CC you in all my company emails. How about that? So, 10-minute preamble. We're back, dude. We're starting hot today.
Hot like a fox.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think foxes are normal temperatures. They're probably cold.
Unless
They live outside.
unless they're in heat.
Well, that's true.
Then they're hot as a fox, which is where your famous phrase comes from.
Right.
So, yeah, welcome back to the Non-Essential Podcast. We hope you all had a great break. This is episode 201. And if this is your first episode, what a weird time to jump in, huh? I
like to think that every episode is somebody's first episode, because that means that we are up to 201 listeners.
It should be. Like, you don't really need to, you don't need to go back to episode 1. I would actually probably advise against it.
It's embarrassing for you. It's embarrassing for me. It's embarrassing for the listener. It's just...
Even though we had 8 years of experience before that, we still didn't know what the fuck we were doing, turns out. But yeah, on the show, we tell each other stories. They're about anything, everything, forever and ever. That's the intro. The 11-minute intro.
Well, I did manage to get a topic. You give me 3 weeks off, and I still am like, I managed to scratch up a topic at the last second.
I managed to forage for one, like my ancestors.
Right. Born in 1930, Kieran Kelly was a wee Irishman with a big nose, which is how he eventually would earn the badass nickname, Nosey Kelly. When he was a young teen, or an old preteen, I don't really know, his family moved from the old Irish city of Rathdowney to the old Irish city of Dublin. It was here that little Nosey would stop being a boring child of little consequence and instead become the young petty criminal.
Become a man of action.
Right. He had enough time spent as a kid doing nothing, and he finally decided to make something of himself. Like I said, a petty criminal that would eventually become the topic of a non-essential podcast.
Yeah.
So,
congratulations, Big Nose. You made it.
You did it.
You're on prime time now.
Mm-hmm. We're sending the certificate tomorrow.
Famous criminal, the schnoz.
So the following story takes place across Ireland and also in London, England. I don't particularly make a point to detail the movement between the two because it doesn't really matter. But if I start naming cities and you actually know them, or places and you know them and you're getting confused,
if you know him, call Steve out in public. Yeah. Challenge him to a fight.
But basically, he spent a lot of time in both places. So Nosey's life wouldn't all be crime and games and fun. He'd also become witness to an astonishing number of tragedies. The first of such events took place about the time that Queen Elizabeth was being coronated, or her coronation, crowned, whatever the fuck they call it over there.
I think coronated is a
word. Yeah. It's just not the one I wrote down, so I confused myself. I make notes and then I don't follow them.
Queen Elizabeth's ascension.
Assassination. Wait a minute, I forgot. It didn't happen. I don't think. So if you remember all the hoopla that we literally just went through over her death, you can probably imagine the atmosphere during young Lizzie's crowning ceremony. Nosey and his good, nay, best friend, Christy Smith, decided to celebrate by going on a crime spree.
By stealing the crown.
Which, by the way, that's the traditional way to celebrate the English monarchy, especially if you're Irish, is to do crime.
I mean, there's... And if your soccer team wins, you assault people.
I'm just saying, I don't think the Irish, and for very good reason, give that much of a shit about the monarchy in England. Well, they care. They just care about it. A lot of people in general. I think. I don't know. I don't know American politics. Don't get me onto world politics. Stuff happens.
I just feel like, if you're from somewhere else, you're laughing at us.
And if you're from here, you're probably laughing at us. And not for the reasons we want you to be.
No, we're pretty oblivious, I've learned the last few years.
So as the pair's whirlwind summer drew to a close, Nosey noticed a change in his pal. Then one day, while they waited at the Browning Street station, Christy Smith looked at his friend, or more likely at his friend's exceptionally large nose, and said, "Nosey, it's about time you got married." Christy then stepped in front of an incoming train and ended his own life.
That would mindfuck me, for sure.
I had fun, but you should probably settle down and goodbye.
Yeah. But not me, though. Watch this.
Over the years, Nosey would bear witness to an astonishing number of suicides by train. But no matter how many of them he experienced, his good friend Christy's would always be special because it was his first. So, in 1969, Nosey was caught committing armed robbery and was sentenced to 2 years in jail. Really not too much more to add to that, but he spent from 69 to about 71 behind bars.
Maybe the motherfucker should have listened to his friend.
Yeah, and got married.
Yeah.
He actually did. I leave it completely out of my notes, but he did get married at one point and had kids. But they're not important to the story either. So
he was married to the life.
Mm-hmm. Nosey's next notable brush with the law came on the 25th of December in 1975, which, if you're a Christian, you might know is an important date, or if you're somebody that enjoys just getting paid time off work, like myself. Nosey was one of about a dozen suspects in the murder of a homeless man by the name of Hector Fisher. Hector had been stabbed repeatedly about the head and neck, but prior to that, while still alive, he had last been seen with a group of men who were all dressed up as Santa Claus. And because one of the Santas had an exceptionally large nose, police questioned Kieran.
Yeah, you should have been Rudolph.
Right. Or at least Nosey the elf, because Nosey's the kind of name an elf would have. Not, it's not jolly old Saint Nose.
The freak.
But nobody was ever charged with the murder because at the end of the day, nobody wants to be the cop to book Santa on murder charges. Also, the victim was a homeless man, and as we know, the system only cares a little about that, those crimes.
We're not putting a man who gives gifts away to children every year. We're not putting him away over one homeless man.
Right.
This is about Christmas.
Merry Christmas, criminals. It's your free pass.
That would be... What would that... I bet that would fucking play, too. Like, if that was the Santa bargain with society. It's like, I keep doing what I do, but you gotta, sacrifice one homeless person to me.
Oh, shit. There's cities, I think Seattle and San Francisco would be calling up, fighting each other over getting to be the one.
That's the thing. Half our fucking country is so sick that they would be like, why not give them all?
Mm-hmm.
I get a TV.
So, in this case, the law cared, but just not that much. In June of 1977, Nosey and another man were found covered in blood in the vicinity of a man who was found to have been violently dead.
Violently dead?
Violently dead, yes. Maurice Whaley had been murdered. Just imagine
a corpse doing the Thriller dance. That's what violently dead is.
Dead is. I'm picturing those video games where that glitches out when you kill somebody, the ragdoll physics, and their body's just contorting and stretching and bouncing all over the place until it eventually just floats up into the heavens, never to be seen again.
Yeah.
Anyway, so a man by the name of Maurice Whaley had been murdered, having his face and genitals mutilated, and also having a broken bottleneck shoved up his ass. So, crime of passion.
Hard to tell what did the killing blow.
Right. So Nosey and the other man were charged with the murder because that's, if he wasn't quite caught red-handed, but he was caught like red, stained clothed. And the other man was quick to give the details of the murder.
Probably your best defense there is like it was such a violent act. The blood literally traveled that far.
Yeah, we were just walking down this other street and it rained on us. We thought it was just red rain. It's weird. The other guy that also got picked up and was also covered in blood was very quick to, give the details of the murder and point out Nosey's involvement. And he, said Nosey's the one that actually murdered the guy. I was just there for the show, man.
No, I didn't kill him. I just did the bottle thing.
That was just a thing me and him had.
That was just,
it was consensual.
A little garnish.
However, during Nosey's trial, his legal counsel used the tried and true method of pointing out that this particular witness against him was blind drunk at the time of the incident and the arrest and the confession, and so that none of the testimony should be counted.
Yeah, when I'm drunk, I make up like fucking grisly murder.
It's weird because they said the guy that, this other witness described the murder in like great detail, and then they're like, he was too drunk to know what was going on. It's like, but he knew.
That shit is a fucking Hollywood myth. Like, I have been horrifically drunk many times, and I will continue to do so. And I promise you, you may not fucking have the perfect memory, but you will not forget a murder or make it up or imagine it.
Yeah, I think there's been 2 times where I was so drunk that like right before I passed out, there's maybe like a
murder
1 to 5 minute stretch of time that I just honestly will never get back. But I was so drunk at that point that you would never manage to murder anybody either.
No, I think legally that's so like you see a guy just get fucked up with knives and shit like. Legally, you should be allowed to drive at that point.
Right.
Because that's instant sober. Like, that's more than any, like, cold shower or cups of coffee. Like, that's...
Yeah. But their argument was that this guy's testimony was sketchy at best, and the jury of big-nosed peers apparently agreed because Nosey was acquitted. And it's
Kangaroo
weird, though. It's yeah. Well, again, the thing is, this guy that was murdered was homeless. So, again, you didn't have a victim's family, like, petitioning for justice. And
it's not like our upstanding fucking murderous thick-nosed Santa Claus here.
Although I should point out that, at this point, Nosey is also homeless. He's an alcoholic vagrant. Like I said, he was married and had kids, but not now.
But not good at it.
Right. So it is kind of weird, too, that these people would be willing to be like, it seems like he did it. He was covered in blood like he did it. This guy described exactly how he did it. He seems like the kind of guy that probably would have done it, but let's give him a chance. He's a lovable scamp. Look how big his nose is.
Yeah. He held it up to the light and I cried.
They thought he was a Muppet. Blah, 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 blah. In the May of 1983, witnesses witnessed as Nosey pushed an elderly man onto the tracks at London's Kensington Station. Blah, it's a mouthful. Fortunately for the unnamed geezer who was pushed onto the tracks, the conductor of the approaching train saw everything and was able to stop before hitting him.
Which also is like, in movies and shit, apparently impossible.
Well, and my guess, although 1983, so we're not talking like 1800s where it's like a steam engine going 1.5 miles per hour.
Where if they applied the brakes back then, the whole train comes off the track.
Right. That's why all the tracks were set in loops. It was just, here comes the station, ready to jump, folks.
Yeah.
Nosey was arrested for the event, but due to the complicated nature of the crime, i.e., only having multiple witnesses in broad daylight and a victim who survived the attack to talk about it.
Having clear charges.
The trial jury was unable to reach a verdict, and Nosey was again acquitted.
There's some truth to, like, the idea that, like, the jury of your peers thing. Probably not the best approach.
Yeah,
and
it's weird.
We need cruel, vindictive AI.
How many times you look at these stories where it's like, that was a clear case, and the jury's like, was it? And I'm not blaming them because it's a whole process too. I consider myself at least relatively intelligent. It wouldn't be that hard to throw you in front of two legal experts and confuse the living fuck out of you.
I was on a jury. I was on a jury for a criminal charge, and just like I don't think I'm an idiot, but you definitely get dumber being in that room.
Well, and because the problem is the instruction's not do you think this guy did it? It's do you think we legally can say he did it? And it's like, well, I don't know. I'm not a fucking attorney. I thought that was your job.
It sucks. And to this day, the lawyers involved who picked me to be on that jury panel, fuck them. I couldn't have made it more clear that I was not going to give it my all or be there mentally. And they picked me anyway because, I don't know, I could talk, I guess. I don't know. Point is, I lost 2 weeks worth of my life for that shit. And
salary.
Yeah, I didn't get paid.
I think they give you what,
I got $25
a day.
Yeah. It was bullshit. It was such bullshit.
Well, what's awesome is here they give you $5 a day, but they don't provide parking. So, there's a good chance you'll spend more than that just fucking getting to court. Yeah. But anyway, he did this in broad daylight. People saw him do it in broad day. It could have been night. I don't know. In fairness, it didn't specify what time of day. But he did it in front of people, right? And the person that got pushed survived to be like, yeah, he fucking pushed me. And somehow, after the course of the trial, the jury's like, we don't think we can hang him on this.
Just hang him on something. He's killing people.
It was a good thing that they did let him out, though, because in August of 1983, so a couple months later, Nosey was again arrested for robbery with the added charge of being drunk in public, which is kind of a bullshit charge. You should be allowed to be as drunk as you want in public. The disorderly part should be the problem. Like if I'm super fucking drunk, but I'm being hilarious, cool.
Usually, if you're drunk, and you're not being disorderly, nobody knows.
I know.
Nobody finds out about that.
I'm just trying to defend alcoholics here. I about guarantee he was being disorderly. I mean, he was robbing a place, so that's in and of itself disorderly.
It's interesting, and it's something that I feel like I get more experience with it now that I'm kind of older, and for some reason when you get older and sadder, you get surrounded by a lot more drunk people. And so I was at a concert actually a couple of weekends ago. That was one thing I actually did during our time out. And behind us, this was a Modest Mouse show, and it was just,
that'd be pretty cool.
It was awesome, but it's always like a sellout. We got there pretty early, so we always get pretty good spots on the floor where we can kind of lean up against the railing and stuff. And there were these people behind us who were kind of by the bar area, and they were there early too, and they were just pre-game drinking. That was the other thing I didn't prepare for with this concert, was all the people who would be drunk before the show even got going. Because it was a Saturday night show, and most of the times when I go to concerts, it's a weird weeknight thing. Anyway, so they're drinking behind us. It's getting a little more rowdy. About a couple songs into the Modest Mouse's set list, me and my friends just start getting really aggressively shoved from behind, and there's just this real intense shoving match going on, and it's just all these fucking drunk people, and one guy he is a fucking tank. He is just massive dude, and he is very upset about the shoving that has gone on, and he's yelling I'm just standing in my space. And it's okay, well, even if that's a lie, I'm not going to fight him.
Right. Actually, sir,
Yeah.
I believe you bumped this gentleman next to you.
And then there's like this girl who was in that group of people who were drinking beforehand behind us, and she is like fucking 5 feet, if that, tall. And she's telling her boyfriend or whatever, who's this kind of tall, lanky guy, like, she is yelling full volume. Again, a great concert is going on, but all we can watch is this shit. And she is yelling at him, "Take him out!"
And you're probably like, yeah, I kind of want to see this.
Yes, I would love, yeah. And like that guy was, and her boyfriend or whatever is like, "No, I'm not going to fight. He's not doing anything wrong." And it's like, one, that's probably true. Two, like, this guy would get thrown through a fucking wall. It wouldn't end well. So like, this guy's playing it right on both levels.
Right. So he wasn't that drunk. He was sober enough to know, don't fight this big fucking guy.
Yeah, and that's another thing is like, you know, there's some people who are just real fucking rowdy and become like, they get it like 2 beers in them and they're yelling, "Take him out." And it's like, to me, I'm not going to pretend I'm the greatest drinker on the planet, but I know I'm not a fighter when I'm sober, and that doesn't change a few drinks in. Like,
no, I'm definitely a happy drunk. Like,
I'm not even a happy drunk. I'm a fucking miserable one, but I know it's my fault, so I'm not going to take it out on any stranger.
So you're Norm in the Cheers guy. I don't know. He's the literal only character from Cheers that I know his name because I never watched the show.
Where everybody knows Norm's name.
Right.
But yeah.
So yeah, that sounds like a good time.
Yeah, it was great. It's a little detour, but it's just like, there's something about like drinking that just like brings the fucking animal out in people that like I don't relate to, because as sloppy as I've gotten, it's never been like, "Fuck you, motherfucker."
Yeah, I only really get that way on meth.
Yeah, well, that's fight dust.
Is it dust? I don't even know what.
If you crush it up and snort it, you can do a lot with it. You could smoke it.
It's a versatile drug.
Mm-hmm.
That'll be next week's episode. Is the many methods of meth.
Yeah, I went to a new concert this time, and I got that anger crystal.
Anyway, so he was arrested for robbery and drunkenness, and he was locked up overnight, during which time he bashed in his cellmate's skull and garroted him with a rope he made out of socks and shoelaces.
Who could have done this?
Yeah, when you're literally the only other person locked in the room with somebody who ends up murdered.
Well, let's bring it to a jury.
The police are like, "I'm fucking done with juries. We're just taking this guy out back."
The only guy you could know for sure is dead. Acquitted.
Were there any witnesses? Didn't think so. So really your only option, if you're trying to get off that charge, would be to claim self-defense. But instead of trying to claim that, which had been flimsy at best given the method in which he killed the guy, he instead confessed to 5 other murders, including that incident involving the Santa Claus.
Okay.
So it's like, haha, you got me cold-blooded this time, but you almost fucking had me before, idiots. Like,
remember the other fucking 5 times you fucked up?
He brought me in for murder, and he said, he probably didn't do it. Well, guess who did it? So the legal system seemed to finally kind of get their shit together, and Kelly would be found guilty of the murder of his cellmates, as well as the Santa Claus murder of Hector Fisher. And for these 2 murders, he was sentenced to life in prison, and he would remain there until his death in 2001. So
but
it wasn't actual life
lived
sentence.
On.
Right. You can actually still visit that. It's behind bars.
You actually trip on it over his grave. Yeah. It's still poking out.
So Nosey was never tried for any of the other murders he confessed to. But one of those was the death of his friend Christy, whom we mentioned at the onset of the story.
He told him he should get married?
Yeah, and killed himself.
Turns
out he did not kill himself.
He took that shit very personally.
Well,
you
yes,
fucking
actually.
get married, fucker.
You're not that far off. According to Nosey, what had actually happened is when he said it's about time you get married, it was a joke referring to the fact that he knew that Nosey was a closeted homosexual. And terrified at the prospect of that becoming public knowledge, he pushed his friend in front of the train. So it's weird, though, that you'd be like, I was so afraid that he'd let it get out and let it be known that I was gay that I killed him. But I'm telling you this right now, voluntarily, even though you'd never even asked about this guy's death. But
it's amazing, like, what prejudice does to people. Where it's like, I'd rather be a murderer than people know I'm fucking gay.
Yeah, and
it's
I'm
like,
not...
being gay is fucking great. Like, killing people is a big fucking no-no.
Yeah, and I'm certainly not defending his actions for that, but I do 100% get... As bad as it can be today, having to deal with people... back in the 70s, and I don't know, I imagine England is just as terrible about it as we are here.
Oh, yeah.
I can see being very worried about, especially he's an Irishman, so coming from probably a very heavy Catholic family and that kind of stuff. I'm not defending his actions, but it does kind of make
yeah,
sense.
I mean, like, prejudice personally and societally, like, absolutely play a factor in that. It's still backwards as fuck. And I'd say that there still has to be something else wrong with you, which we know, because at this point in my story, we know for sure now that he's killed at least 3 people. Other confessions include the 1977 murder of a man named Edward Toll, who was a fellow vagrant that Nosey says he strangled to death because he found him sleeping on the gravestone that Nosey liked to sleep on. Oh, that's not fair.
Very, very stable guy here.
It's neither one of your gravestones, to be fair.
Right, and now, like, are the ghosts going to fight over the spots? Be like, well, I was buried here. It's like, well, I was murdered here. It's like, who haunts it? Or maybe they team up. It's turns out that they were soulmates, like, literally.
Yeah.
I need to go visit that gravestone.
How fucked up would that be? Like, a literal concept of a soulmate, but it's never somebody you knew.
Right.
You gotta have, like, the awkward, okay, well, I guess we're a team now.
You don't get along at all.
Yeah, it's like, what the fuck? Who paired us?
That's going to be like a new sitcom on Fox, because I'm going to write it.
Fox will buy it.
Right, they buy it. That's why it's specifically said Fox.
So just put Seth MacFarlane's name on the front page of the script, and we'll get it through.
What I do is I go, like, sit close to Seth MacFarlane as I'm typing it, and then I just put written by Seth MacFarlane. Yeah. And it's not a lie. It was written by as in proximity. It was written nearby to Seth MacFarlane. Anyway.
I'm not finished. Sit the fuck back down.
Another one of the murders he confessed to was a 1982 poisoning of a man named Mickey Dunn, who had testified against Nosey at another trial. But again, he was homeless. And because he died just, like, from the poisoning, it was always listed as, like, they thought he just died of exposure to the cold. They thought it was, like, a natural... they didn't investigate it too much.
No.
So, in 2016, a man named... I know it's Jeff Platt, but I'm just calling him Geoff Platt, because that's how it's spelled.
Geoff.
I think he was the giraffe at Toys R Us until they went under. In 2016, he released a book titled The London Underground Killer. Platt is a former police officer who worked a few of Nosey's cases and also interviewed Nosey numerous times during his incarceration. So in the book, Jeff claims that Kelly murdered as many as 31 people, which include a large number of deaths that were initially reported as suicide by train. So that was a favorite method of his, just pushing people in front of trains. I have filed a lawsuit against Jeff for not calling the book London's Trained Serial Killer. Because, I mean, fuck, how do you not do that?
I don't know. I'm trying to think of something better, but I can't.
It's pretty good. I'm a genius. What can I say? A reporter who had also followed Nosey's story released a different book 3 years later, so 2019, to refute Jeff's claim that Nosey was a serial killer responsible for 31 people's deaths, and instead that he was just a serial killer responsible for maybe 5 or 6 people's deaths. The ones he confessed to seem pretty legit. The friend in front of the train one's probably pretty dead on, and the other two, it's going to be hard to prove, but it seems weird that he would just randomly confess to them when not being questioned about them at all. Like, and they weren't even like mystery. It wasn't like, you know, you do see that sometimes where people in jail try to claim responsibility for other high profile crimes for whatever reason. But these weren't high profile crimes. They were homeless people that literally nobody was talking about being dead. So I feel like they were probably pretty legit confessions. So it's clear that nobody really knows for sure how many people Nosey killed, which is why I'm currently writing my book in which I refute both the previous books. I plan to accuse Nosey of every unsolved murder and at least 80% of the reported suicides that took place in Dublin and London between 1962 and 1983.
They do say you could see his nose's shadow in the Jack the Ripper killings.
Yeah. Like,
Just
I think
down a dark alley, it always poked out around a corner.
His murderous misdeeds go far and wide, and also back in time. That's the first sentence of my book. I just wrote it right now on air. I'm going to call the book The Nose That Killed a Bunch of People between 1962 and 1983, because I think that's a pretty good... You know, I just berated the other guy for not calling him the trained serial killer, but I don't want to go with that either. I want to go with mine. So, that's all I have on Nosey. He was a serial killer of at least 5 people, maybe as many as 31, or maybe as many as everybody that died, you know, up until the show was recorded, ever.
Yeah.
He might be responsible for every death that's ever happened on this planet.
And he might be about to sneeze right behind you.
Ah! Shit.
Nah, if he sneezed, it would blow up the planet.
These people look like they've been killed by a shotgun, but there's no bullets. Just snot everywhere.
It's like that scene, like that's always like gift of like Terminator 2, where it's like the nuclear blast, and she's like holding onto the fence or whatever, but it's just snot blasting her into the skeleton.
It's not that that deep red, like an orange sky that we were used to seeing. It's green, just like the skies are just green. Yeah. Everything's green.
You could sell that to Nickelodeon.
The nose that slimed the world. So that's all I got. But
cool. Well,
I know people like serial killers.
Yeah, they're friends of the show.
I'm going to invite them to lunch and then blame Kanye for it.
Yeah. You opened the store, god damn it. So yeah, well, welcome back to our shit. So we'll keep it going. We'll have more next week. Another story, another crime, another nose. Yeah, that's the new thing. And we'll tentatively call this season 3. We don't really have seasons, but... Yeah. Season 3, each cracter gets a progressively bigger nose until we're just crushed by it.
But it plays a smaller and smaller part in the story. We just barely mention it. Be like, oh yeah, this guy, his nose was the size of, you know, the Titanic, and then you never mention it again.
Next week, Duke Honk.
Duke Honk.
All right, yeah. See you next week. Bye-bye. I imagine I just, like, levitated away.